Hello everyone. Welcome back to MindFlow English. This is Amelia, and today we're continuing our journey toward natural, confident English speaking. As you begin this lesson, I want you to feel calm, focused, and fully present. No matter where you are right now, whether you're at home, commuting, taking a short break, or multitasking, let this moment be a quiet reminder that every small practice you do brings you one step closer to fluency. Your progress might feel slow at times, but every repetition, every sentence, and every moment of listening builds your ability to think and respond naturally in English. In this part of our lesson, we'll start building the foundation for natural spoken English by strengthening the expressions you use in everyday communication. Many learners know vocabulary and grammar, yet they still struggle to speak smoothly because they don't have natural sentence patterns ready in their mind. My goal here is to help you form those patterns so speaking feels easier, smoother, and more automatic. Think of this part as training your brain to recognize and produce natural expressions the same way fluent speakers do. Let's begin with one of the most important skills: expressing your thoughts clearly and naturally. Fluent speakers rarely rely on simple expressions like "I think" or "I believe." Instead, they use a variety of richer phrases that sound more confident and expressive. Listen carefully and repeat in your mind after me. From my perspective, the way I see it, to be completely honest, in my experience. These phrases might look simple, but when used correctly, they can instantly make your English sound more mature and fluent. They also help you organize your ideas more clearly when speaking. Now try imagining a real situation. Someone asks you for your opinion about online learning, traveling, or working with a team. Instead of saying, "I think it's good," you could say, "From my perspective, online learning becomes much more effective when you follow a consistent routine." Notice how smoothly the sentence flows. This kind of expression helps you sound thoughtful without needing complicated vocabulary. Take a moment now and think of a topic you know well. It could be cooking, studying, or something simple from your day. Start your sentence with "in my experience" and quietly form a full sentence in your mind. Speak slowly, breathe, and give yourself time. For example, "In my experience, studying English becomes easier when I listen to short audio lessons every day." Try creating your own now. Let's move to another essential skill: expressing polite agreement or disagreement. In daily conversations, you won't always agree with everyone, and that's completely normal. The key is expressing disagreement politely and naturally. Instead of saying, "I don't agree," fluent speakers use softer expressions like, "I see your point, but I have a slightly different perspective." You can also say, "I understand what you mean, although I'm not completely convinced." Notice how these phrases soften your tone and help the conversation stay friendly and respectful. Try practicing quietly. "I see your point, but I have a different perspective." Give yourself a moment to feel the rhythm of that sentence. Now imagine someone shares an idea you don't fully agree with. Instead of rejecting it directly, use a softer pattern. For example, if a friend says a new routine is easy, but you think it's challenging, you can respond with, "I understand what you mean, although I feel it might be harder to maintain long term." This keeps the conversation comfortable while still expressing your truth. Let's continue by practicing advanced ways to describe daily situations. In everyday conversations, you often talk about your day, your tasks, or small events that happen. Basic learners say things like, I was busy, or I had a problem. But fluent speakers add detail and emotional nuance with expressions such as, today was more demanding than I expected, or I ran into a few unexpected issues earlier, or my schedule was packed from the moment I woke up. These expressions create clearer images and help your English sound more natural. Think about your day so far. Try describing it using a more advanced expression. For example, this morning felt unusually busy, but I managed to stay focused. Now quietly create one sentence about your own day. Let's explore how fluent speakers describe emotions. Instead of saying, I was happy, you might say, I was genuinely excited about it. Instead of saying, I was angry, you can say, it really pushed my patience to the limit. Instead of saying, I was confused, you might say, I wasn't entirely sure what was happening. These expressions help you sound more expressive without using complicated vocabulary. Try practicing one now. Choose a simple emotion and transform it. For example, I wasn't entirely sure how to respond at first, but it became clearer later. Now create your own quietly. Next, let's practice responding naturally in conversations. Fluent speakers often need a moment to think, and instead of staying silent, they use expressions that give them time to form ideas. For example, let me think about that for a second. That's a really good question. Well, it depends on the situation. If I had to explain it simply, these expressions allow your mind to pause without breaking the flow of conversation. Imagine someone asks, how can I improve my English quickly? Instead of rushing, you could say, well, it depends on your goals, and then continue your sentence naturally. Try forming your own example now. Let yourself pause and breathe before speaking. Now imagine a simple conversation about your plans for the week. A basic speaker might say, I will work and rest. But an advanced speaker might say, I'm planning to catch up on some work, and I might take a short break toward the weekend to recharge. This type of expression shows fluency, confidence, and rhythm. Try describing your plans using a richer structure. For example, I'm hoping to spend some quality time with my family, while also focusing on a few personal goals. Now quietly create your own sentence. Before we move to the next part, remember this: fluency is not about speaking fast or using difficult words. It's about clarity, rhythm, confidence, and natural expression. Every time you practice, your brain becomes more familiar with these patterns, and speaking becomes easier. You're not aiming for perfection. You're aiming for progress, and you are doing exactly that. As we continue building your fluency here on MindFlow English, I want you to stay relaxed and open to the natural rhythm of the language. You don't need to memorize everything. You don't need to force yourself to sound perfect. What you're doing right now, listening, absorbing, repeating, and practicing, is exactly how fluent speakers develop their skills over time. The key is gentle consistency, not pressure. So let's keep moving forward, step by step, letting your English flow more naturally with each moment. One powerful way to grow your fluency is learning how to express subtle differences in meaning. Fluent speakers rely on small changes in wording to show politeness, confidence, or nuance. These differences may seem small, but they create a huge impact on how natural your English sounds. For example, a basic learner might say, I don't like it. But an advanced speaker would say, I'm not really a fan of it. A basic learner says, I disagree, while a fluent speaker says, I'm not entirely sure I agree with that. These expressions soften your message while keeping it clear. They also reflect emotional intelligence, which is a big part of natural communication. Try practicing now by choosing a simple idea. Instead of saying, I don't understand, try saying, I'm not entirely sure I understand that. Feel how much more natural and calm it sounds. Transformation exercises like this help your brain build flexible patterns so you can express yourself with more detail and confidence. Let's explore another important aspect of fluency: expanding your sentences. Fluent speakers rarely speak using only short, simple sentences. They connect ideas smoothly. For example, instead of saying, I went to the store, I bought bread, I came home, you can say, I went to the store earlier today, picked up some fresh bread, and came home to make a quick breakfast. This style of speaking creates a natural flow. It makes your English sound more connected and mature. Try thinking of 3 simple actions you did today. Maybe you woke up, checked your messages, and ate breakfast. Now combine them into one sentence. For example, I woke up early, checked my messages, and prepared for the day ahead. Do it slowly, gently, without rushing. This type of practice rewires your brain to produce fluent speech automatically. Another tool fluent speakers use is introducing ideas in natural ways. Expressions like, to give you an idea, let me explain it this way. Another thing worth mentioning is, or, what I mean by that is, help you guide your listener through your thoughts. These expressions are incredibly useful in conversations, presentations, and everyday interactions. Imagine someone asks how to stay motivated when learning English. A basic response might be, you should study every day, but a fluent speaker might say, to give you an idea, one thing that always helps me is creating a routine I genuinely enjoy. This simple introduction makes your explanation smoother and more engaging. Try creating your own example by starting with, another thing worth mentioning is, let's explore advanced connectors now. Connectors help your ideas flow naturally from one to another. Words like, however, on the other hand, as a result, nevertheless, and, for instance, appear everywhere in fluent English. Instead of speaking in short, disconnected ideas, you can use these connectors to build longer, more natural sentences. For example, I wanted to study last night. However, I felt too tired to focus, so I decided to rest instead. This isn't complicated English, but it sounds fluent because the ideas connect smoothly. Try practicing by creating your own sentence, starting with however. Another essential tool fluent speakers use is asking natural questions. Instead of sticking to simple questions like, where are you from? Or what do you do? They use more expressive patterns like, what have you been up to lately? How are things going on your end? Has anything interesting been happening in your life these days? These questions help conversations feel alive and more meaningful. Imagine you meet a friend after some time. Instead of, how are you? Try, so what's been going on with you recently? This small shift makes you sound more natural. Practice saying it slowly. So what's been going on with you recently? Now let's talk about adding detail to your sentences. Many learners speak in very short, basic lines because they're afraid of making mistakes. But adding just a little detail makes your English immediately sound more fluent. For example, Instead of, I went to work, you can say, I went to work earlier today, and it turned out to be a really productive morning. Instead of, I studied English, try saying, I studied English for a while today. Focusing mainly on listening practice. Notice how the sentences become richer without becoming harder. Take something simple you did today. Maybe you made coffee, watched a video, or cleaned your room. Now describe it with one small detail. For example, I made a cup of coffee, and it tasted surprisingly good, even though it was just instant coffee. Try creating your own quietly. This skill makes a big difference in your fluency. Another powerful technique is showing curiosity. Fluent speakers stay engaged during conversations by asking follow-up questions. They say things like, "Really? What happened after that? That sounds interesting. Tell me more. How did you feel about that?" These questions help build connection and show genuine interest. Imagine someone tells you, "I changed my job recently." A basic response would be, "Oh, okay." But a fluent one would be, "Really? That sounds like a big change. How are you feeling about it so far?" Try saying it now with calm, natural rhythm. Let's talk about hesitation. Everyone hesitates, even native speakers. The difference is that fluent speakers use natural fillers, like actually, basically, you know, let me think, to be honest, and I guess, instead of freezing or saying, These fillers give you a moment to think while keeping the conversation flowing. Imagine someone asks you a difficult question. You can respond with, "Well, to be honest, it's something I've been thinking about for a while." This sounds natural, calm, and confident. Try practicing by answering the question, "What is something you want to improve about your English?" Start with, "Well, to be honest." Now let's practice advanced ways of giving suggestions. Instead of saying, "You should," fluent speakers say, "You might want to consider. It could be helpful if you." One thing that really works for many people is, "You may find it useful to." These expressions sound soft, supportive, and fluent. Imagine a friend says they want to improve their speaking. Instead of, "You should practice," try, "You might want to consider practicing a little bit every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Try creating your own sentence, starting with, "It could be helpful if you." Before we finish this part, I want you to take a slow, deep breath and remind yourself that fluency is not a single moment of achievement. It is a growing process. Every practice session, every repeated sentence, every moment listening to MindFlow English brings you closer to speaking naturally. You are learning, improving, and building confidence step by step. As we continue our lesson together, I want you to stay patient with yourself. Fluency comes from steady, consistent exposure, not from pressure or perfection. Here on MindFlow English, my goal is to help you speak in a way that feels natural, confident, and effortless over time. The more you listen, repeat, and practice, the more your brain becomes familiar with the rhythm of English, and the easier speaking becomes. So let's move deeper into the patterns fluent speakers use every day. One essential skill you need to develop is clarity in communication. Many learners know vocabulary, but struggle to express ideas clearly when conversations become complex. Fluent speakers use simple guiding expressions to help listeners understand their meaning. These include, "What I'm trying to say is," "Let me put it another way, to clarify my point," and "What I mean is this." These phrases help you explain ideas smoothly, especially when your listener seems confused. Imagine explaining a work situation and realizing the other person doesn't fully understand. Instead of repeating the same words, you could say, "Let me put it another way. Our goal is to make the process smoother for everyone." This shows organization and confidence. Try practicing quietly with your own example. Take a simple idea and begin with, "What I'm trying to say is." Another key to fluency is describing things in layers, not just giving short statements. Fluent speakers add a little background, detail, or emotional context. Instead of saying, "The meeting was good," you can say, "The meeting went surprisingly well, and we managed to cover all the important points without feeling rushed." Instead of saying, "I had a good day," you might say, "My day turned out to be quite pleasant, especially because I had some extra time to relax." These layered descriptions help your speech sound natural and expressive without being complicated. Try thinking of your morning. Instead of saying, "It was fine," add a detail. "My morning was quite refreshing because I had enough time to prepare my day calmly." Now quietly create your own sentence. Let's move to storytelling. A major part of natural English. Fluent speakers use transitions to guide listeners through their story. Words like "at first," "suddenly," "after a while," "eventually," "to my surprise," and "looking back" give your story structure and rhythm. For example, "At first, I thought it would be a calm day, but suddenly everything became much busier than expected." These transitions help your listener follow the flow naturally. Think of a small moment from your week and retell it with one transition. For instance, "Eventually, everything worked out better than I expected." Try forming your own story silently using "at first" or "to my surprise." Let's now practice advanced ways to describe emotions and reactions. Instead of saying, "I was surprised," you might say, "It caught me completely off guard." Instead of "I was confused," you could say, "I wasn't entirely sure what was happening at first." These expressions sound gentle, expressive, and natural. Try transforming a simple sentence now. Take the idea, "I was confused," turn it into, "I wasn't entirely sure what was happening at first." Feel the difference. It's richer, clearer, and more fluent. Another essential part of fluency is showing understanding during conversations. Fluent speakers often use expressions like, "I see what you mean," "That makes sense," "I follow you," or "I completely understand where you're coming from." These phrases help build trust and show emotional connection. Imagine someone tells you they're struggling with a personal challenge. Instead of saying only, "Okay," you might say, "I completely understand where you're coming from. It can be difficult to handle that." Try repeating the phrase quietly. "I completely understand where you're coming from." Now let's explore how to handle misunderstandings politely. In real conversations, you won't always hear things clearly or fully understand the other person. Fluent speakers avoid direct expressions like "what" or "I didn't understand." Instead, they use gentle phrases such as, "Sorry, could you say that again more slowly? Would you mind repeating that?" Or, "I didn't quite catch that last part." These expressions keep the conversation smooth and respectful. Practice this softly now. "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat it?" Feel the calm, polite tone of the sentence. Another important aspect of natural communication is showing interest. Fluent speakers respond warmly with expressions like, "That sounds exciting," "Wow, really? I'd love to hear more about that," or that must have been a great experience. These phrases help deepen conversations and make your English sound more engaging. Imagine someone says they visited a new place. Instead of nice, you can say, that must have been an amazing experience. What was your favorite part? Try repeating the question quietly to yourself. Now let's practice expressing doubt politely. Fluent speakers rarely say, I doubt it, or I don't believe that. Instead, they soften their uncertainty with expressions like, I could be wrong, but it seems to me that, as far as I can tell. These patterns sound more natural and emotionally sensitive. For example, as far as I can tell, you're making excellent progress with your English practice. Try creating your own sentence starting with, I could be wrong, but let's move deeper into the skill of sentence transformation. This practice trains your brain to choose natural expressions automatically. I'll give you a basic sentence, and you upgrade it in your mind. I forgot. Transform it into, it completely slipped my mind. I finished my work. Transform it into, I managed to wrap up my work earlier than expected. These small upgrades make your speech sound much more fluent. Try forming your own transformation now. Choose a basic idea like, I'm busy, and change it to, I'm juggling quite a lot at the moment. Before we end this part, I want to remind you that you're learning an entirely new way of expressing your thoughts, and that takes courage, patience, and practice. Fluency is not about speaking without mistakes. Even native speakers make mistakes every day. Fluency is about confidence, clarity, and rhythm. You are developing all of these step by step. As we continue this lesson together, I want you to recognize something important. Fluency develops when you stop translating and start thinking directly in English. This shift takes time, but every minute you spend listening to natural patterns, repeating them, and using them helps your mind build the structures it needs. Here on MindFlow English, my goal is to make that process feel simple, comfortable, and encouraging. You don't need perfect grammar or advanced vocabulary. You just need consistent exposure, practice, and patience with yourself. Let's strengthen your ability to express reasons and explanations in natural ways. Fluent speakers rarely say only because. They often use expressions like, the reason is that, that's mainly because, one of the reasons is, or it has a lot to do with. These expressions give your sentences more depth and make your explanations sound smoother. For example, instead of saying, I'm learning English because I need it for work, you can say, I'm learning English mainly because it plays an important role in my work. Notice how the rhythm feels more natural. Try practicing quietly with your own example. Start with, one of the reasons is. Now let's practice expressing preferences in a more fluent way. Basic learners often say, I like, or I prefer. But fluent speakers expand these ideas using expressions like, I tend to enjoy, I'm more comfortable with, I usually go for, or I find myself choosing. These patterns sound soft, mature, and flexible. Imagine someone asks what kind of videos you enjoy watching. Instead of saying, I like English videos, try, I tend to enjoy listening to English practice videos, especially when I want to relax and improve at the same time. This sounds natural and conversational. Choose something you enjoy and create your own sentence beginning with, I tend to enjoy. Another core part of fluency is describing possibilities and probabilities. Fluent speakers often rely on expressions like, it's likely that, there's a good chance that I wouldn't be surprised if, it seems possible that, and it could happen. These are incredibly useful in everyday conversations. For example, I wouldn't be surprised if you start feeling more confident after practicing consistently for a few weeks. Try creating your own sentence starting with, "It's likely that." Practice slowly, without pressure. Let's continue by exploring hypothetical situations, which are common in natural English conversation. Instead of saying only if, fluent speakers often use expressions such as, "If I had to guess," "If it were up to me," "In an ideal situation," or "If I were in your place." These expressions help you express imagination, opinion, suggestion, and perspective. Imagine someone asks what you would do if you had more free time. A basic answer might be, "I would study more." A fluent response could be, "If it were up to me, I'd probably spend more of my free time practicing English in a fun and relaxed way." Try creating your own sentence starting with, "If I had to guess," or "In an ideal situation." Now let's improve your ability to respond naturally. When you agree with someone, you can use expressions like, "That's true," "I completely agree with you," "You're absolutely right," or "I feel the same way about that." These phrases help conversations feel warm and connected. Imagine someone says, "Learning English is easier when you enjoy the content." You can reply, "You're absolutely right. Enjoying the content makes all the difference." Try repeating this softly. "I completely agree with you." Feel how comfortable and natural it sounds. Let's also practice expressing surprise or interest. Fluent speakers say things like, "That's interesting," "Really, I didn't know that," "Is that so?" or "Wow, that's quite something." These expressions show engagement and help the conversation flow more smoothly. Imagine someone tells you they learned English by watching videos every day. Instead of only saying, "Really," try, "Really, that's interesting." It's amazing how much progress you can make with consistent practice. Now create your own quiet example using, "That's interesting." Now let's explore the skill of expanding your answers instead of giving short responses. When someone asks a question, beginners often answer with one sentence. Fluent speakers answer, then add one or two extra details. For example, if someone asks, "How was your day?" instead of, "It was good," you can say, "It was good. I managed to finish my tasks earlier than usual, so I had some extra time to relax." This small habit instantly makes your English sound more fluent. Try practicing now. Think of a simple question, like, "What did you eat today?" Instead of, "I ate rice." Expand it to, "I ate rice earlier today, and it tasted surprisingly good because I added some extra seasoning." Quietly create your own expanded answer. Let's continue with expressing opinions politely. Fluent speakers often use frameworks such as, "Personally speaking," "From what I've seen," "As far as I know," or "I'd say that." These expressions make your ideas sound thoughtful and respectful. Imagine someone asks whether listening practice is helpful. Instead of "Yes, it is," you might say, "Personally speaking, listening practice is one of the most effective ways to build natural fluency." Try creating your own sentence, starting with, "From what I've seen." Now let's practice describing routines in a natural way. Fluent speakers don't simply say, "I do this every day." They expand routines with phrases like, "I usually start my day by," "Most days, I try to," "From time to time, I like to," "Every now and then, I make sure to." These patterns help your English feel relaxed and authentic. For example, most days, I try to spend at least a few minutes reviewing something in English, even if it's something simple. Now craft your own sentence starting with every now and then. Another part of fluency is reacting to news or updates. Fluent speakers say things like, "That's great to hear," "I'm really glad to hear that," "Oh, that's unfortunate," or "I'm sorry to hear that." These expressions help you respond with emotional awareness. Imagine someone says they passed an important exam. Instead of only saying "good," say, "That's great to hear. You must feel really proud of yourself." Try repeating, "That's great to hear." Before we end this part, take a gentle breath. You're learning to express ideas with more detail, clarity, and natural rhythm. Every time you return to MindFlow English, every moment you listen and practice with me, you're strengthening the way you think and respond in English. The progress may feel small on the surface, but underneath, your brain is building deeper connections that will support lifelong fluency. As we move forward together, I want you to recognize how much progress you've already made, simply by staying present and listening. Fluency grows through repeated exposure, through hearing natural expressions again and again, until they become familiar and automatic. Here on MindFlow English, everything you hear is carefully designed to help your brain absorb patterns naturally, just like a child learns their first language. So stay relaxed, breathe deeply, and let the language flow through you. Let's strengthen your ability to express time-related ideas in a natural way. Fluent speakers don't always speak with rigid structures like yesterday, today, or tomorrow. They often use flowing expressions such as earlier today, later on, at some point, in the near future, not too long ago, or a while back. These expressions help place events in time without sounding robotic. For example, instead of saying, "I met my friend yesterday," you can say, "I met my friend not too long ago, and we had a really nice conversation." It feels more relaxed and conversational. Try practicing quietly with one event from your own day. Start your sentence with earlier today or a while back. Now let's practice expressing ongoing situations and habits. Fluent speakers use phrases like, "I've been meaning to," "I've been trying to," "I've been working on," "I've been thinking about." These structures help you talk about long-term actions or intentions, which native speakers do all the time. Imagine someone asks what you've been focusing on recently. Instead of saying, "I study English," you might say, "I've been trying to improve my listening skills by watching more English videos each day." This gives your listener a clearer picture of your efforts. Try forming your own sentence beginning with, "I've been thinking about." Another important part of fluency is describing changes over time. Native speakers naturally use expressions like, "I'm starting to feel more comfortable with," "I've slowly become more confident in," "I'm getting better at." These structures help you express progress and growth. For example, "I'm starting to feel more comfortable speaking English, especially when I practice regularly." Try saying quietly to yourself, "I'm getting better at," and finish the sentence with something true for you. Let's move on to describing challenges in a natural way. Instead of using simple statements like, "It's difficult," fluent speakers use richer expressions such as, "I find it a bit challenging," "I'm still working on this part," "It takes some getting used to," or "I haven't fully mastered it yet." These expressions sound gentle and realistic, making your speech more authentic. Imagine describing your experience learning pronunciation. Instead of saying, "It's hard," try saying, "It takes some getting used to, but I'm slowly improving each day." Now create your own example starting with, "I find it a bit challenging." Now let's develop your ability to express certainty or uncertainty. Fluent speakers rarely speak in extremes. Instead, they use natural phrases like, "I'm quite sure," "I'm fairly certain," "I believe so." "It seems to me that," "I'm not completely sure, but." These expressions help conversations feel balanced and natural. Imagine someone asks if listening practice is effective. Instead of saying, "Yes, it is," you can say, "I'm fairly certain that consistent listening practice helps build confidence." Try creating your own sentence beginning with, "It seems to me that." Let's work next on expressing gratitude and appreciation. Fluent speakers use phrases like, "I really appreciate it," "That means a lot to me," "I'm grateful for that," "Thanks for taking the time," or "I truly value your help." These expressions help you communicate warmth and sincerity. Imagine someone helps you with a task. Instead of saying "thank you," you could say, "I really appreciate your help. It means a lot to me." Practice quietly by forming your own sentence starting with, "I'm grateful for." Another vital skill is expressing relief or reassurance. Native speakers often say things like, "I'm glad to hear that," "That's a relief," "I feel much better now," or "That puts my mind at ease." These phrases help convey comfort and emotional clarity. Imagine someone tells you that a problem has been solved. Instead of saying "good," you might say, "That's a relief. I'm glad everything worked out." Try repeating softly, "That puts my mind at ease." Now let's strengthen your ability to express expectations or desires. Fluent speakers say, "I'm hoping to," "I'm looking forward to," "I'd really like to," "My goal is to," "One thing I'm aiming for is." These expressions are incredibly useful in everyday conversation. Imagine someone asks about your English journey. Instead of saying, "I want to improve," you might say, "One thing I'm aiming for is to speak English more naturally in everyday situations." Now create your own sentence beginning with, "I'm hoping to." Let's continue by practicing contrast and comparison, which help you communicate ideas more precisely. Fluent speakers say things like, "Compared to before," "On the other hand," "In contrast," "What I used to do was," or "But now." These expressions show development, difference, and change. For example, compared to before, "I feel much more confident when speaking English." Try creating a sentence starting with, "On the other hand." Now let's practice sounding more natural when giving your opinion gently. Many learners speak too directly, which can feel harsh or impolite in English. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," fluent speakers use softer forms like, "I see it a bit differently," "I'm not sure I agree with that completely," or "That might be true, but." These help you express disagreement without sounding rude. Imagine someone says that learning English quickly is easy. You might respond, "I see it a bit differently. I think it takes consistent effort over time." Try practicing quietly with your own sentence, beginning with, "That might be true, but." Before we close this part, take another slow breath. You are learning expressions that shape the rhythm, tone, and emotional texture of real English. With every moment you spend here on MindFlow English, listening, repeating, and absorbing, you're building a deeper foundation for natural fluency. All of these expressions will become more familiar as you continue practicing, and soon they will come to you automatically. As we continue this journey together, I want you to remember that every small improvement you make becomes part of your long-term fluency. You may not notice progress day by day, but your brain is absorbing patterns, rhythms, and expressions in ways you might not realize yet. Here on MindFlow English, everything you hear is designed to guide you gently toward natural communication, helping you think and respond in English without stress or hesitation. Let's begin this part by strengthening the way you express future plans and intentions. Fluent speakers rarely use only simple forms like I will or I'm going to. They often use more natural expressions such as I'm planning to, I'm expecting to, I'm hoping to, I intend to, or I might end up. These forms give your sentences flexibility and make your English sound more conversational. For example, I'm planning to spend more time on listening practice this week because it really helps me stay focused. Try forming your own sentence starting with, I'm hoping to. Let the words flow naturally. Now let's practice expressing routines and repeated behaviors. Native speakers often use expressions like, I tend to, I usually, most of the time, more often than not, and every now and then. These phrases help you describe patterns in your life without sounding repetitive. Imagine describing how you study English. Instead of saying, I study every day, you might say, most of the time, I try to review something in English, even if it's just for a few minutes. Now create your own quiet sentence, starting with, I tend to. Another essential skill is expressing degrees of intensity. Fluent speakers rarely use only very or really. They often use expressions like quite, fairly, pretty, extremely, a bit, a little, or somewhat. These subtle differences make your English more natural and emotionally precise. For example, I'm feeling pretty motivated to improve my speaking today. Or, this lesson is quite helpful for building confidence. Practice with a simple idea. I'm feeling a bit tired, or I'm fairly confident about this. Choose one and repeat it softly to yourself. Next, let's strengthen your ability to describe experiences using natural storytelling patterns. Fluent speakers often begin stories with expressions like, a while back, not too long ago, the other day, earlier this week, or one time. These give listeners a sense of context and help your story feel more engaging. Imagine sharing a simple event. Instead of saying, I went to the store, you might say, the other day, I went to the store and ran into an old friend I hadn't seen in years. Now think of your own experience and begin it with, not too long ago. Let's move on to expressing outcomes and results. Native speakers frequently use expressions like, as a result, because of that, that's why, so eventually, this led me to, and that's how I ended up. These connectors help your ideas flow smoothly and logically. For example, I started practicing English consistently, and as a result, I began to feel much more confident. Now create your own sentence beginning with, that's why. Another powerful tool is describing your thoughts and reflections. Fluent speakers use expressions such as, I've realized that, I've noticed that, one thing I've learned is, what I've discovered is, and it suddenly occurred to me that. These expressions help you speak thoughtfully and reflectively. Try forming a sentence like, I've noticed that I understand English better when I listen to slow, clear conversations. Now quietly create your own starting with, one thing I've learned is. Let's now develop your ability to express encouragement and reassurance. These expressions are extremely common in English and help build emotional connection. Fluent speakers say things like, "Don't worry about it," "Take your time," "You're doing great," "It'll work out," and "Just keep going." Using these expressions makes your speech warm and supportive. Imagine someone tells you they're struggling with pronunciation. Instead of giving them a short response, you could say, "You're doing great," and it'll become easier as you practice. Try repeating softly, "Take your time, you're learning step by step." Next, let's practice expressing limitations or boundaries, which fluent speakers often do in subtle ways. Instead of saying directly, "I can't," or "I don't want to," native speakers often say, "I'm not sure I can," "I might not be able to," "It's not really possible for me right now," or "I don't think that will work for me." These forms sound polite and gentle. Imagine someone invites you somewhere, but you can't go. Instead of saying "I can't," you might say, "I'm not sure I'll be able to make it this time." Try creating your own sentence starting with, "I don't think." Now let's strengthen your ability to transition smoothly between ideas. Fluent speakers often use soft transition phrases, such as, "Speaking of that, by the way, actually, now that you mention it, on a related note," and "while we're on the topic." These transitions make conversations feel more dynamic. For example, "Speaking of that, I've been wanting to practice my pronunciation more regularly." Now form your own quiet sentence, starting with, "By the way." Let's also practice expressing small doubts or hesitations. Fluent speakers often say, "I'm not entirely sure," "I might be mistaken," "It seems unclear," "I haven't decided yet," or "I need to think about it." These subtle forms help you sound natural when you're uncertain. Imagine someone asks you about your weekend plans. Instead of, "I don't know," try saying, "I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'm thinking about spending some time relaxing." Repeat quietly, "I might be mistaken, but." Another part of fluency is expressing approval or positive feedback. Fluent speakers say things like, "That sounds great," "That's a good idea," "I love that," "That's impressive," or "That works for me." These expressions help your English sound friendly and confident. Imagine someone tells you they want to study English more seriously. A natural response is, "That sounds great. It's a wonderful goal to work toward." Try creating your own sentence, starting with, "That's a good idea." Before we finish this part, take a calm breath. You're absorbing expressions that will help you connect ideas, share experiences, and respond naturally. Fluency grows through repeated gentle exposure, and every moment you spend here on MindFlow English builds your confidence from the inside out. You're developing not just vocabulary, but rhythm, tone, structure, and emotional intelligence in English. As we move deeper into this lesson, I want you to stay relaxed and continue absorbing the language naturally. By listening to these patterns and repeating them quietly, you're teaching your brain to think in English without effort. Little by little, these expressions become part of your natural speaking style. That's the power of consistent practice. And that's exactly what we're doing together here on MindFlow English. Let's begin this part by strengthening the way you express recommendations. Fluent speakers rarely say, "You should," directly. Instead, they use softer and more natural expressions like, "You might want to try," "It could be helpful to." One thing that works well is, "You may find it useful to," or "I'd recommend." These make your suggestions sound friendly and supportive. Imagine someone asks how to improve listening skills. Instead of saying, you should listen to English every day, you might say, you might want to try listening to short English clips throughout the day. It really helps your mind get used to the rhythm. Now create your own gentle recommendation, starting with, it could be helpful to. Now let's focus on expressing opinions with nuance. Fluent speakers often soften their opinions to sound respectful and open-minded. Instead of saying, this is better, they say, I feel like this might work better. It seems more effective, or, from my perspective, this approach is a bit more helpful. These expressions give you confidence without sounding too direct. Imagine you're comparing two study methods. Instead of saying, this one is good, you can say, from my perspective, this method feels a bit more effective because it keeps me engaged. Try forming your own sentence, beginning with, it seems to me that. Next, let's practice expressing small frustrations or inconveniences in a natural, fluent way. Native speakers often use phrases like, it's a bit annoying, it can be a hassle, it gets overwhelming at times, it stresses me out a little, or, it's not the easiest thing to deal with. These expressions help you communicate emotion without sounding too dramatic. Imagine talking about a difficult task. Instead of saying, it's very hard, you might say, it can get overwhelming at times, especially when I'm tired. Try practicing with your own sentence starting with, it's a bit. Let's move on to expressing satisfaction or enjoyment. Fluent speakers rarely say only, I like it. They say things like, I really enjoy it. I find it quite satisfying. It feels rewarding. I'm really into it. Or it gives me a lot of joy. These expressions help your English sound warmer and more expressive. Think of something you genuinely enjoy. Instead of, I like listening to English, you can say, I really enjoy listening to English because it helps me relax while improving my skills. Now form your own sentence beginning with, I find it quite. Another important element of fluency is expressing ability and difficulty in subtle, natural ways. Instead of saying, I can't do it, fluent speakers often say, I'm not able to do that yet. I'm still figuring it out. I'm working on it. Or, I haven't gotten the hang of it. These expressions sound gentle, realistic, and emotionally intelligent. Imagine talking about fast conversations. Instead of saying, I don't understand fast English, you might say, I haven't quite gotten the hang of fast speech yet, but I'm improving. Try making your own sentence starting with, I'm still working on. Now let's strengthen your ability to show politeness and respect. Fluent speakers often use softeners, like, if you don't mind, would it be okay if, do you think you could, I was wondering if, and whenever you have a moment. These forms make your English sound polite and comfortable to listen to. Imagine asking someone for help. Instead of help me, try, I was wondering if you could help me understand this part. Now form your own gentle request, beginning with, if you don't mind. Let's continue with natural conversational fillers and reactions. Fluent speakers constantly use expressions like, let me see, let me think, well, actually, to be honest, and basically. These fillers aren't mistakes. They give you time to think and help conversations flow naturally. Imagine someone asks you, why do you want to improve your English? You can respond, well, to be honest, I want to feel more confident when speaking with others. Try repeating quietly, let me think, to get used to the rhythm. Another skill fluent speakers use is expressing agreement with variation. Instead of repeating, yes, they say things like, absolutely, definitely, for sure, exactly, "That's true," and "I agree completely." These expressions help conversations feel dynamic. Imagine someone says that practice makes a big difference. You might reply, "Absolutely. Consistent practice really does change everything." Try forming your own sentence, starting with "definitely." Now let's practice expressing disappointment or empathy. Fluent speakers often say, "That's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. That must be difficult. I can imagine how you feel." Or, "That sounds frustrating." These expressions help you connect emotionally with others. If someone tells you they're struggling with a new task, you might say, "I'm sorry to hear that. It must be challenging, but you're doing your best." Try creating your own sentence beginning with, "That must be." Let's work next on expressing curiosity and interest. Fluent speakers naturally ask follow-up questions such as, "What happened after that? How did that go for you? What made you decide that?" Or, "Could you tell me more about it?" These questions deepen conversations and show engagement. Imagine a friend tells you they started a new hobby. Instead of only saying, "Okay," you could say, "That sounds interesting. What made you decide to try it?" Practice quietly by forming your own question, beginning with, "How did?" Now let's focus on emphasizing points naturally. Fluent speakers often use expressions like, "What I mean is," "The main point is," "What I'm trying to highlight is," and "The most important thing is." These structures help you clarify and emphasize ideas. Imagine explaining why listening is helpful. You might say, "The main point is that listening helps train your brain to recognize natural patterns." Create your own sentence with, "What I mean is." Before we finish this part, take a calm moment to appreciate the progress you're making. You're not just learning words, you're learning how to think, respond, and express yourself with natural rhythm. These skills take time, but you are building them steadily. Every minute you spend here with MindFlow English helps you become more confident, more fluent, and more connected to the language. As we continue, I want you to stay present and allow the language to sink in naturally. You don't need to force anything. Just listen, absorb, and let the rhythm guide you. This is how fluency grows, not through memorizing long lists of vocabulary, but through repeated exposure to natural patterns, just like the ones you hear here on MindFlow English. Let's begin this part by strengthening your ability to make comparisons and express contrasts in a smooth, fluent way. Native speakers don't just say, "This is better," or "That is worse." They use expressions such as, "compared to before," "in contrast," "on the other hand," "when you think about it," or "in some ways." These help you shape your thoughts more clearly. For example, "Compared to before, I feel much more confident speaking English now that I practice regularly." Try creating your own sentence, starting with, "On the other hand." Let the ideas flow naturally. Next, let's work on expressing assumptions or educated guesses. Fluent speakers often say things like, "I get the impression that," "It seems like," "I have a feeling that," "I'd imagine," or "I suppose." These subtle phrases help you share opinions without sounding too direct or certain. Imagine someone seems tired. Instead of directly saying, "You look tired," you might say, "I get the impression that you've had a long day." This sounds soft and considerate. Now form your own quiet sentence beginning with, "It seems like." Let's move deeper into expressing purpose and intention. Fluent speakers often introduce purpose with expressions like, "so that I can," "in order to," with the goal of, or to make it easier. These expressions make your sentences more clear and organized. For example, I practice listening every day so that I can understand English more naturally. Try creating your own sentence beginning with the goal of. Now let's practice expressing gradual change. Native speakers often use patterns like, I'm slowly starting to, I've gradually become more comfortable with, I'm beginning to notice that, or I'm getting used to. These phrases show development, not a sudden change. For example, I'm slowly starting to feel more confident when speaking English out loud. Take a moment to create your own sentence, beginning with, I've gradually. Let's continue by improving your ability to express limits or partial agreement. Fluent speakers rarely say only yes or no. They use expressions like, I agree to some extent, I can see your point, that's partly true, I agree with you up to a point, or there's some truth to that. These help you respond respectfully and thoughtfully. Imagine someone says, learning English takes a long time. Instead of agreeing completely, you might say, I agree with you up to a point, but I think consistent practice can make the process faster. Create your own sentence, beginning with, I can see your point. Another essential skill is expressing possibilities in a less direct way. Native speakers naturally use expressions like, there's a chance that, it could be that, maybe it's because, it's possible that, or, you never know. These make your English more flexible and conversational. For example, it's possible that you're improving faster than you think. Now create your own quietly starting with, there's a chance that. Now let's strengthen your ability to handle pauses naturally. Fluent speakers don't always speak continuously. They take their time, and they fill the silence with phrases like, let me think for a moment, that's a good point, I need a second to process that, or give me a moment. These fillers make your speech flow smoothly. Imagine someone asks you a deep question. You could respond with, let me think for a moment. That's actually a really interesting question. Try repeating, let me think for a moment, quietly to yourself. Let's continue by practicing expressions of reassurance. Fluent speakers often say things like, it's completely normal. That happens to everyone. Don't worry, you're doing fine. You're on the right track. And, it takes time, but you'll get there. These help conversations feel supportive and encouraging. Imagine someone feels discouraged about their English progress. You might say, it's completely normal to feel that way. You're learning step by step, and you're doing great. Now practice quietly saying, you're on the right track. Next, let's develop your ability to express enthusiasm or excitement naturally. Instead of only saying, I am excited, fluent speakers say, I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. I'm thrilled about it. I'm excited to see how it goes. Or, it sounds amazing. These expressions help you communicate positive energy. Imagine you're planning something enjoyable. You can say, I'm really looking forward to improving my fluency this month. Create your own sentence beginning with, I can't wait. Let's also practice expressing relief or satisfaction. Native speakers often use phrases like, that makes me feel better. I'm glad that's over. I feel so relieved. That's reassuring. Or it's good to know that. These help you express emotions in a calm, natural way. Imagine you finished a difficult assignment. You might say, I feel so relieved now that it's done. Try forming your own beginning with, it's good to know that. Another important aspect of fluent conversation is describing cause and effect. Fluent speakers use expressions like, because of that, as a result, so now, that's why, this means that, or thanks to. These connectors make your explanations flow more logically. For example, I listen to English every day, and as a result, I've become much more confident. Try creating your own sentence beginning with, that's why. Let's finish this part by practicing expressions of encouragement toward yourself. Fluent speakers often talk to themselves with phrases like, I can handle this, I'm getting better, I'm proud of my progress, I'm moving in the right direction, or I'm improving step by step. These self-supporting phrases help build confidence and motivation. You can say, I'm improving step by step, even if I don't notice it every day. Now form your own gentle affirmation starting with, I'm getting better at. As you reach the end of this part, take a deep breath and acknowledge your effort. You're absorbing natural English patterns across all areas, opinions, feelings, transitions, comparisons, and emotional expressions. These are the building blocks of real fluency. And every moment you spend here on MindFlow English brings you closer to speaking smoothly, confidently, and naturally. As we continue, I want you to remember that fluency is not only about forming sentences correctly, it's about communicating your thoughts clearly and naturally in real-life situations. Every expression you learn, every pattern you repeat, and every gentle moment of listening builds your instinct for the language. The more familiar these patterns become, the more easily they will come to you when you speak. That's why staying consistent with your practice here on MindFlow English is so valuable. Let's begin this part by strengthening your ability to express conditions and outcomes naturally. Fluent speakers don't only rely on if, they use expressions like, if that happens, in that case, otherwise, as long as, provided that, and only if. These help conversations feel more coherent and thoughtful. For example, as long as you practice regularly, you'll notice steady improvement. Now try creating your own sentence beginning with, in that case. Imagine explaining a simple situation and let the words flow. Let's also practice expressing different shades of agreement, which is an important part of natural communication. Instead of simply saying yes, fluent speakers use expressions like, I think so too. That's a good point. I agree with that idea. You're right about that. Or, I feel the same way. These soft variations make your English sound warm and engaged. Imagine someone says that listening is a powerful way to improve English. Instead of replying only, yes, you might say, I think so too. Listening regularly really helps me stay connected to the language. Now form your own quiet response, starting with, that's a good point. Next, let's work on expressing negative ideas in a gentle, natural way. Fluent speakers avoid harsh expressions like no or I don't like that. Instead, they soften their tone with phrases such as, I'm not sure that works for me. It's not exactly what I had in mind. I'm not really into that. I'd prefer something different. Or, that doesn't appeal to me much. These make communication smoother. Imagine someone suggests something you don't want to do. Instead of saying no, you could say, I'm not sure that works for me today, but maybe another time. Try forming your own sentence beginning with, I'd prefer. Another essential skill is expressing obligations and necessity in a natural way. Not everything must sound strict or formal. Fluent speakers use expressions like, I need to, I have to, I'm supposed to, I'm expected to, or I really should. These variations help you describe responsibilities naturally. For example, I really should review some vocabulary later today. Now create your own sentence beginning with, I'm supposed to. Let's move on to expressing permission or possibility. Fluent speakers often use phrases like, you're allowed to, you're free to, you can go ahead and, or feel free to. These expressions appear in daily interactions, especially in polite conversation. Imagine giving someone permission. Instead of saying, you can do it, you might say, feel free to ask me anytime you need help. Create your own quiet sentence starting with, you're free to. Let's now strengthen your ability to express suggestions in collaborative, friendly ways. Fluent speakers often say, why don't we? Maybe we could. How about? Or, it might be nice to. These patterns make conversations feel open and comfortable. Imagine making weekend plans. Instead of, let's go out, you could say, how about going out for a short walk later? Try forming your own idea beginning with, maybe we could. Now let's explore the skill of adding nuance to your descriptions. Fluent speakers often include small details that make their speech richer without becoming complicated. They say things like, a bit, kind of, sort of, in a way, or to some degree. These expressions soften meaning and help your speech feel more natural. For example, I'm kind of excited about my progress these days. Try creating your own sentence beginning with, in a way. Let's move deeper into expressing uncertainty or speculation politely. Native speakers often say, I might be wrong, but, I guess, I'm not entirely convinced. It could be, or, it seems possible. These expressions make your English sound more thoughtful and realistic. Imagine you're unsure about why something happened. Instead of saying, I don't know, you could say, I might be wrong, but it seems possible that I need more practice. Practice quietly. I'm not entirely convinced. Next, let's practice expressing emotional reactions in more depth. Fluent speakers avoid simple statements like, I feel good, or, I feel bad. Instead, they say things like, I feel relieved, I feel encouraged, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I'm feeling inspired, or, I feel grateful. These forms express emotion more clearly and naturally. Imagine you made progress today. Instead of, I feel good, try saying, I feel encouraged by the progress I'm making. Now create your own sentence beginning with, I'm feeling. Let's continue with expressions for checking understanding. Fluent speakers often confirm what they heard using phrases such as, so what you're saying is, just to make sure I understand. Do you mean, or are you saying that? These help avoid confusion and make communication clearer. For example, just to make sure I understand, you're planning to study later tonight, right? Now create your own sentence starting with, do you mean? Another important part of fluency is describing habitual behavior in natural patterns. Fluent speakers use expressions like, every once in a while, from time to time, more often than not, whenever I get the chance, or, as a rule. These help you describe routines with nuance. Imagine describing your listening habits. You might say, whenever I get the chance, I listen to English podcasts while walking. Try forming your own sentence beginning with, from time to time. Let's also strengthen the way you describe abilities and limitations realistically. Fluent speakers say, I'm capable of, I'm comfortable with, I'm not familiar with, I'm not confident with, or I haven't practiced that much. These structures help you describe your strengths and weaknesses naturally. Imagine talking about grammar. Instead of saying, "I'm bad at grammar," you might say, "I'm not entirely comfortable with grammar yet, but I'm improving." Try creating your own sentence, starting with, "I'm capable of." Before we finish this part, take a slow breath and let your mind relax. You've just practiced advanced patterns that fluent speakers use constantly without thinking. These expressions give you flexibility, emotional subtlety, and confidence. As you continue here on MindFlow English, they will become more and more natural to you. You're training your mind to speak with clarity, depth, and ease. And you're doing it step by step. As we reach this final part of the lesson, I want you to stay focused and relaxed. Everything you've been practicing throughout this series is building toward a deeper sense of comfort and confidence with English. Every expression, every pattern, every gentle repetition is helping you internalize the language in a natural way. Fluency isn't a moment. It's a gradual transformation, and you've been making that transformation step by step here with MindFlow English. Let's begin this final part by strengthening how you express reflections and insights. Fluent speakers often share personal thoughts using expressions like, "I've come to realize that," "One thing I've been thinking about is," "I've started to notice that," "It occurred to me that," or "I've begun to understand that." These make your speech sound thoughtful and mature. For example, you can say, "I've begun to understand that consistent listening helps me think more naturally in English." Try forming your own sentence, starting with, "I've come to realize that." Now let's practice expressing appreciation for experiences. Fluent speakers often use expressions like, "I'm thankful for," "I appreciate the fact that," "I'm grateful that," or "I really value." These allow you to express deeper emotional meaning. Imagine talking about your English journey. Instead of simply saying, "I'm thankful," try, "I really value the progress I've made, even if it's gradual." Create your own sentence beginning with, "I appreciate the fact that." Next, let's work on describing personal growth in a natural, fluent way. Native speakers often say things like, "I've grown a lot in," "I've improved when it comes to," "I'm becoming more confident in," "I'm learning to," or "I'm becoming better at." These expressions help you talk about your development clearly. For example, "I'm becoming more confident in expressing my ideas in English." Now create your own sentence starting with, "I've improved when it comes to." Let's continue by strengthening your ability to express encouragement toward others. Fluent speakers use phrases like, "Keep going," "You're making great progress," "You're doing better than you think," "Don't give up," "You've come a long way," and "I'm proud of you for trying." These phrases create warmth and connection. Imagine encouraging a friend who's learning English. Instead of saying, "Keep studying," you could say, "You're doing better than you think, and your progress is showing." Try creating your own encouragement beginning with, "You've come a long way." Now let's move deeper into expressing doubt or caution. In a gentle, fluent way, native speakers often use expressions like, "I'm not too sure about that," "I might need to think about it," "I'm a little uncertain," or "I'm not convinced yet." These structures help communication remain polite and thoughtful. Imagine considering a suggestion. Instead of directly rejecting it, say, "I'm not entirely convinced yet, but I'll think about it." Try forming your own sentence beginning with, "I might need to." Let's practice expressing conclusions and summaries, which are very common in fluent conversation. Expressions like, so overall, in the end, to sum it up, what it comes down to, is, and basically, help you wrap up your thoughts smoothly. For example, in the end, consistent practice makes the biggest difference. Create your own conclusion, starting with, so overall. Now let's develop your ability to speak about goals and hopes naturally. Fluent speakers often use expressions like, my goal is to, I'm aiming to, I'm working toward, I hope to, I want to eventually, or one day, I'd love to. These help you talk about the future with clarity. Imagine sharing your English goals. You could say, I'm aiming to speak more naturally in daily conversations. Now form your own sentence beginning with, one day I'd love to. Let's continue with expressing comfort and discomfort in a natural way. Native speakers use expressions such as, I feel comfortable with, I'm not comfortable with, it doesn't feel right, I'm okay with that, or I'd rather not. These help you express boundaries politely. For example, I feel comfortable practicing English by listening to longer audio lessons. Try forming your own sentence beginning with, I'd rather not. Now let's strengthen how you react to good news. Fluent speakers often say, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. That's amazing news. I'm glad to hear that. Or, that sounds great. These expressions help you communicate enthusiasm naturally. Imagine someone tells you they got a new job. Instead of only saying, great, try, that's wonderful, I'm truly happy for you. Now create your own reaction beginning with, that sounds great. Let's move to expressing empathy deeply. Fluent speakers show understanding with expressions like, I completely understand. I can imagine how you feel. That must be difficult. I'm here for you. Or, you're not alone. These expressions allow for meaningful connection in conversation. Imagine talking to someone who's going through something stressful. You might say, I can imagine how you feel. It must be a lot to deal with. Try forming your own sentence, starting with, I completely understand. Now let's practice expressing enthusiasm about opportunities. Fluent speakers say things like, I'm excited about, I'm really looking forward to, I'd love the chance to, it would be great if, or, I'm open to the idea of. These help you sound open, positive, and optimistic. For example, I'm really looking forward to using English more confidently in real conversations. Now create your own sentence beginning with, it would be great if. As we near the end, let's develop your ability to reflect on your own journey. Fluent speakers often express personal insight with phrases such as, looking back, when I think about it, over time, I've realized, in hindsight, and now that I reflect on it. These expressions help you analyze experiences in a fluent, thoughtful way. Imagine reflecting on your English practice. You might say, looking back, I've made more progress than I expected. Now form your own reflection starting with, when I think about it. Before we finish, I want you to take a deep breath and appreciate how far you've come. You've practiced opinions, emotions, transitions, agreements, disagreements, hopes, limitations, reflections, and encouragement. Each pattern you've heard here on MindFlow English is another piece of your growing fluency. You're building a foundation of confidence and clarity that will stay with you for the rest of your English learning journey. As we close this final part, remember that fluency doesn't appear all at once. It grows quietly through moments like these, moments when you listen, practice, and allow the language to become a natural part of you. You're doing incredibly well, and you should be proud of your dedication. Thank you so much for spending this time learning with me. Keep practicing every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Your effort will bring big results over time. And most importantly, enjoy the journey. You are not just learning English, you are becoming an English speaker. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the MindFlow English, and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss future lessons. I'll see you in the next practice. Keep believing in yourself and keep speaking with confidence.